Yeah, it's good. We got a lot of good stuff in there. I'm excited to talk about their plans for Black America. It's gonna be good. You don't believe it? Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't mind. All right, let's get our. Let's hope so. Knock on wood. welcome everybody to another edition of the Black Agenda Podcast. As always, I'm your co-host Devin Dito, and I have with me here, as always, is my co-host Adrian Guest, and we are back again on another Saturday at 4 o'clock, as always, to bring you really the biggest news from this past week, whether that's entertainment, political. We try to, pick out some stories and things that might be interesting and talk about them here on the Black Agenda Live podcast. And before we get started, I just wanted to say, from the people in my hometown down in Gulfport, Mississippi, they did get hit with the hurricane this week on Wednesday, Hurricane Zeta. A lot of people, this got lost within the election news, but it was a Category 2 hurricane, and it made landfall in Louisiana, but did also really hit the coast of Mississippi pretty hard. Gulfport, Biloxi, Waveland Bay, St. Louis all took a pretty nasty hit, and a lot of people are actually still without power, and that happened Wednesday night. Today is Saturday. I know a lot of my folks are without power still, and it's been a couple of days, so keep them in your prayers and your thoughts. Give to relief efforts, of course, in the wake of Hurricane Zeta. So I just wanted to say that before we get into what we have in store. So we have a very good show for you. We got a ton of election news, but also some cybersecurity news, some entertainment news. And so the very first thing we want to talk about is we want to start with the election and what's going on there. And in particular, we want to talk about some recent endorsements that Donald Trump just got. So in particular, if you haven't been paying attention, Donald Trump just got nominated an endorsement from Lil Wayne, the rapper Lil Wayne. Also, he got an endorsement from NFL Hall of Famer Brett Favre, and also Jack Nicklaus. Also, all of these people just endorsed Trump within like the past couple days. And so, Adrian, we 50, I'm not 50 Cent, but Ice Cube didn't endorse Donald Trump, but I feel like ever since we found out that Ice Cube was helping the Trump administration come up with its platinum plan, we've kind of seen this kind of not a surge, but a movement a little bit, at least, into people thinking that Donald Trump may have the possibility of winning the black male vote. And so what you're seeing is 50 Cent, the rapper 50 Cent, even came out and said he was not going to vote for Joe Biden because of his tax plan in particular. I think he eventually walked that back a little bit, saying F Donald Trump. But Adrian, I think it's interesting. We're seeing all of these late moment endorsements. I don't know how much it's going to help. I don't know how many people will look to Lil Wayne and Brett Favre and Jack Nicklaus for political leadership and advice. But it is interesting at the least to see, somebody like Lil Wayne go up and now publicly endorse Donald Trump.
Devin, it just makes me think of that saying, all my skin folk ain't my kinfolk, I you can support whoever you want to, but going back to what we've talked about in several episodes about Donald Trump's denial of white supremacy, denial of systemic racism. I just still don't understand how you, which I don't know if Lil Wayne or 50 Cent would be a prominent figure in black communities, but they are in a sense that they have influence and wealth. I don't know how you can come out and say I'm going to get behind it, but hey, you can do whatever you want. Devin, I think it just goes to the fact that this race is tightening up. Both campaigns are trying to do any and everything to get people out to vote. I mean, I think no matter who the endorsement is coming from, they're going to highlight it to any capacity, because this thing is getting tight. I mean, I think Joe Biden, from what everybody is seeing and saying from the polling, he definitely has a lead. I mean, in most of the battleground and toss-up states, I mean, he's ahead. According to 538.com, looks like Biden holds a lead in Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia. I mean, the list goes on and on. Some of those leads are as up as 9 points, like in Michigan, some as low as like 1 point in Georgia, so probably within the margin of error. But, Devin, what we're seeing in 2020 is that somehow, and I guess because it's a referendum on Trump, but Joe Biden has really made this coalition that the Democrats are always talking about expanded. everyone's always trying to talk about the black and the young vote and how that's missing. But Joe Biden has made states like Georgia and Arizona, which have never really been competitive for Democrats, competitive. I mean, even states like Texas are starting to be a toss-up now, Devin. So I mean, I think that what
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing is that people realize that this is a moment of change. This is a true moment, like like we always keep saying, the large, the biggest, most important election of our lifetime. So I think that's why we're starting to see a lot of these trends in these key battleground states.
Yeah, I mean that's all it is. I think it's a referendum on Donald Trump and what he represents, how he's acted the last 4 years, how he is, really worked to divide up the country into, who you pray to, how you look, how much money you have. He has definitely, made sure to fan the flames of hate and division. And I think people are honestly just tired. They're just tired of the hoopla and the tweets that go out at 4 o'clock in the morning, and just the back and forth of
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump calling people names. I mean, it's just not the White House used to be a presidential place. You used to have a bar for how you expected a president to behave and to act. But Donald Trump has just dismantled all of that and acts like a kid sometimes, and he just does what he wants, says what he wants, and the Republican Party capitulates, and nobody stands in the way to say this is not how a president behaves. And I think what you see is, people aren't necessarily excited for Joe Biden, but they understand there's a very real difference between Joe Biden and Donald Trump and how they behave and how they try to get things done. And so I think that is I think that's a lot of people are open to the idea of voting for Joe Biden because he's likable. You can say he hasn't done anything in his 47 years, but you can at least say as a person he's better than Donald Trump. And I think whether you think that matters or not, to a lot of people it does. And that's why, like you say, places like Arizona and Texas is now going purple. You see, Biden is competing in a lot more states now. Trump is defending almost every state, every battleground state that he won in 2016. He is now trying to defend, and in a lot of them, he's behind in these polls. Now he has a chance. It really all hinges, to set the race here. Joe Biden leads in all of the important states like Michigan and Wisconsin, but the one that's going to really decide who wins is probably going to be Pennsylvania. Joe Biden has a 5 point lead there. I think Trump was in Pennsylvania, I want to say yesterday. He might be back in there today. That is a tipping point for whether or not Trump will get reelected. If he loses Pennsylvania, it's really hard to see him winning. To put it frankly, Trump could win all of the toss-up states: Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Florida, North Carolina, and Georgia. If he loses Pennsylvania, he could still lose the entire election, and that's because Joe Biden leads in so many other states. So that's how narrow Trump's path is, and so he has to really clean sweep. And so I think Joe Biden is in a strong position, to win going into to November 3rd. And so, and talking about what's going to happen on November 3rd, we're all worried about mail-in ballots and who's going to be counted and what's going to happen with that if we're going to get a result that day. We just wanted to let you know the rules are changing literally every day. Every day we're getting some kind of court case, some kind of decision as far as whose votes are going to be whose votes are going to count, when they're going to be counted, if they're going to be counted at all. And we have seen several states like New Jersey, Nevada, North Carolina, and Iowa and Pennsylvania make it easier for voters to vote by mail. But the Trump campaign and the Republican Party as a whole has really stood firmly in trying to suppress votes that are going to be counted, particularly by mail, because that is being dominated by Democrats. And so, Adrian, we saw here, MSNBC actually put out a really great kind of a list, essentially, of all the efforts by the GOP to try to suppress the votes and fight the changing of rules to make it easier for people to vote by mail. And I think what you see is they know what's at stake, and they know that their candidate is behind, and they're trying everything they can to save him.
Yeah, Devin, I think it's good that we talked about those poll numbers as a way to transition into this, because I think those poll numbers show why Trump and the Republicans are trying their darndest to stop people from voting this year. I mean, I think by and large, one report had that there's about 300 voting cases nationally that either the Republican Party or the Trump campaign or both are. I'm not a legal person, but I'm going to use the term colluding, because it seems like they're just working to stop people from voting. So that's not, no one's reported that, viewers, but I'm gonna say that because it seems like they're working to steal the election. I mean, when you look at some of the examples, I mean, you've got in Pennsylvania, the Republican Party asked the Supreme Court to reverse the order allowing ballots to be received up to 3 days after the election. In North Carolina, you got them, working to block the extension of the deadline to receive mail-in ballots. Texas, a suit to try to avoid thousands of ballots just because people voted curbside because we're going through a pandemic, Devin. I mean, case after case, whether it be North Carolina, Michigan, Texas, Iowa. I mean, the Republican Party and the Trump campaign are on a mission to stop people from voting, nullify people who've already voted, make signature requirements on ballots, even though we know we're supposed to be social distancing. It's just really important to even look at the fact that the president has really involved the Supreme Court and all of the federal courts so heavily in this election. I mean, he's already alluded to the fact that he wants it to work its way up to the Supreme Court, where he's got a Republican majority. He's got three on there now. But as you can see, Devin, from all of these cases, I mean, a lot of federal courts and appeal courts, and then like I said, the Supreme Court have stepped in to help the Republican Party here. And I just wanted to highlight that, Devin, because I think by and large, as society, we don't pay attention to the judicial branch. I mean, yeah, if you go to court or whatever, and you happen to pay fines, yeah, you may have to worry about it then. But I think by and large, no one paid attention that over the 4 years, Donald Trump, has put more, judges on the federal positions than any other president. I mean, he's got more, Supreme Court justices than any other president. And I think that over the 4 years of all of his tyranny and hoo-ha and just, all the craziness he's done, it's brought us to this point to where we're in a situation where this election could be decided by the courts, where Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell has stacked it. So, Devin, I think we're working ourselves up to obviously a dangerous situation. I won't say unprecedented, because Bush and Gore, that election was decided by the Supreme Court. But this one, there's just so many efforts from the Trump campaign and the Republican Party to make it harder for people to vote. And I don't see how anyone could tolerate and vote for a party that's so gun-ho on stopping eligible registered voters, not illegals or whatever. They're trying to stop eligible registered voters, people who have a right to vote in our country, people who have a voice. That's who they're trying to stop, viewers, not people who are dead or dogs, whatever the case may be. So yeah, Devin, that's a really important piece to highlight.
Yeah, I mean we've seen this play before. In response to Barack Obama's 2008 election, what did we see? We saw, and when the 2012 election came around, we saw a slew of voter ID laws go into effect in a lot of battleground states, and I think even one Republican strategist was even caught on camera essentially saying that the reason why these voter ID laws came into play was so that we could suppress the vote that took place in 2008. We wanted to stop that many people from going to the polls. I mean, that is, unfortunately, the Republican Party has put itself in a position as being the party that does not like it when people who typically don't engage with the political process actually come out and vote and make their voices heard. They don't like that. Instead of working to get those voters, they would just rather suppress them and say, we're going to make it more difficult for you to actually go to the polls, which seems as anti-democratic as it gets. But I mean, despite all of everything that they're trying, we're seeing record early voting across the country by far. by far, we're looking at 2020 being the highest voter turnout we've ever seen. We are right now, over 90 million early votes have already been casted for the 2020 election, and we still have a couple days to go. Most early voting has stopped. I voted on Thursday here in Texas, but we're right at 2/3 of the 2016 total turnout. So very likely we're going to get way more than what we had in 2016, and typically that bodes well for Democrats. It's not a guarantee, but typically when turnout is higher, Democrats usually benefit from that. And of course, with early voting and mail-in voting, Democrats have dominated that. But there is some worry out there, particularly among Black and Latinos, particularly Black and Latino males, is where Donald Trump and the Republican Party have made some inroads there, and so the base in that particular demographic might be a little softer for Democrats, but Joe Biden is making that up when it comes to seniors and really white working class people. He's doing extremely well. I mean, he's probably going to win seniors this year. Donald Trump carried seniors in 2016. That is a huge problem, especially in a place like Florida. If seniors do vote for Joe Biden in large, then he could very well take Florida, which would be huge. And so, and just to kind of encapsulate this early voting surge that we've seen, 14 states have already seen more than half of their registered voters already vote this year. And Texas has actually surpassed the total vote count from 2016. So Texas has already had more people vote this year in early voting than voted in all of the 2016 election.
Despite Governor Abbott.
Despite Governor Abbott's attempts to, try to make counties, keep voting boxes down to one or not let curbside voting go on. People are enthusiastic. People want their voices heard this time, and no matter what they do, they cannot stop them. So, so it's going to be interesting to see who's left to vote on election day. That's probably going to be primarily a lot of Republicans are going to go out that day, and so it's going to be interesting to see. We have to be mindful of the results and don't try to, jump to conclusions based off early voting, data coming in early, or election day voting, coming in early. States start counting differently. They count different stacks of votes different times on election day. So you cannot just jump to conclusions based off, 10% of returns. So we have to make sure we wait until these things are called. And just to cap off this particular
segment, Devin.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say exactly. We gotta be vigilant and be patient to make sure that takes place. And I was gonna say, I guess one little positive before we end this first little segment is that a federal judge did implement an order for the United States Postal Service to take extraordinary measures to make sure that we can get the mail out on time, because apparently mail has been laggy in about 22 different postal districts. And well, actually, it's been laggy around the country, but the order from the judge, Emmett Sullivan, is going to help in about 22 different postal districts. So it's awesome to see that, Devin, because I think we had heard, all the reports of the mail lagging. We saw videos, this week of, mail-in ballots, stacked, within postal offices. I think that this order is really going to do a lot. I mean, they're going to require, sort of explanation. So if the mail is lagging, they're going to have to, answer to it. So that's really good, that accountability. Even going to have some representation to the courts. I mean, that's a part of the order as well. So that way, if there is something going astray, the Postal Service is going to have to own up and answer to it. So, Devin, I think, with 2020 being such a record-breaking year with mail-in ballots, we got to make sure that our Postal Service takes these, as a judge said, extraordinary measures to ensure that we get, our mail, back to our election officials on time so that they can count it and that we can kind of, nip the bud before we get a lot of disinformation about who won and, people calling states before we actually get the vote count. So glad to see this judge taking the stand.
Absolutely. I mean, it's something, a lot of us didn't think about over the summer. We didn't think about the USPS and, them trying to slow down mail, but that is part of the plan. You slow the mail down enough, votes come in late, and then they're going to go in court and say, well, these votes came in after November 3rd. We should, not count those. And that could be thousands. That could be, millions. I'm not going to hype it up, but it could be an issue. And so that's why they're acting, with such extraordinary measures, trying to make sure that people's votes make it on time. So with that, we're going to end our first segment, and when we come back, we're going to dig into Trump's and Biden's plans for Black America. Trump calls his the Platinum Plan, and then Biden has his called Lift Every Voice. So we're going to dig into some of the details within those plans and kind of see, what's at stake. What is our choice on November 3rd, and what you'll be voting for. So stick with us, and we'll be right back.
All right, viewers, let's go ahead and get back into our second segment here, where we're going to talk a little bit about the plans that each candidate has for Black America. So, Devin, to start off with, we've got the Platinum Plan from President Trump, where it looks like it has about four different pillars: opportunity, security, prosperity, and fairness. A lot of these pillars kind of center around helping employment levels, reforming the criminal justice system, helping with generational advancement, and even helping in opportunity zones. Now, over the next 4 years, the Platinum Plan makes a couple of promises for Black America. Some of those include like 3 million jobs, $500,000 in Black-owned businesses, increasing capital almost by 500 billion, safe neighborhoods with the highest policing standards, even education and helping Black churches. There's a lot of different things that I saw. It's kind of interesting with home ownership and financial literacy. That was a really nice component that I saw because I think financial literacy is a missing component of our communities. There's a lot of different things that the plan talks about, Devin, that kind of works its way around how it plans on getting it done. But I think whenever you look at it overall, I'm obviously not going to say I endorse Donald Trump, but when you look at the Platinum Plan at face value, it actually does look like a pretty decent plan, Devin. I mean, it looks like it's trying to stabilize Black America and to bring some growth to Black America. Just to, like I said, on face value, Devin, I guess I can't argue with, some of those points I read off there.
Yeah, I mean, I would give Trump credit in that it is, quote, a plan. It's not entirely clear, how they're going to get some of these things done. I think the very first line of it, when we last talked about it, is it promises like I think 3 million new jobs or something like that, and it completely ignores the fact that we lost like 22 million jobs throughout the entire country back in March, and we're only halfway back to getting those jobs. So is that an additional 3 million plus what we've already lost? Again, that's part of ignoring the coronavirus pandemic and what that has done to the Black community, and they're putting out this plan that doesn't really address those problems. I do, of course, putting $400 billion, into Black businesses, or at least minority-owned businesses. That's all good. And as far as the healthcare thing, putting more, I think they were trying to put more money towards research for chronic diseases. I mean, that's definitely good, but there still isn't a comprehensive plan to cover people who need it most, those with pre-existing conditions, and those who have chronic diseases like diabetes and things. They don't have a plan to cover those folks at a cost. They just say affordable health care. That's not enough. We need to know a little bit more how you plan on giving folks affordable health care. And so I think, it's a plan. It's one page. I mean, I guess he thinks we're worth one page. That's just enough to give some bullet points to say that's all right. It certainly is not as detailed as you would like to see for somebody who's been in office for 4 years. But I get it. It's something.
And Devin, not to cut you off, one of the things I would say about his plan is that, which the same can be said, I guess, about Joe Biden. But one of the things that's going to be different is the fact that, Donald Trump has been president, of the United States, where Joe Biden hasn't. So Donald Trump has, in theory, had more power to enact some of these things. And, when you talk about, stuff with education and, I think one of the parts is that we're going to, expand Pell Grants. But, when you see that the administration has had such such a position on school choice, almost as a way to take away from public schools. It's just one of those things where this plan is great. I mean, yes, we want to see more drug rehabilitation versus incarceration, but the rhetoric from the administration is more tough policing. They're not really trying to do any initiatives with legalization of marijuana. It's just almost a harder pill to swallow. It's kind of the thing that I wanted to make sure that viewers understood, because again, we support anything that's going to help Black America, but it's just one of those things to where it's just, pandering at a certain point, because it's like, if you don't even want the FBI to teach, racial training, how am I going to believe that you're going to do something for our communities? That's, I just wanted to make sure to express that to viewers, because, part of his plan says that, he'll make, Juneteenth a national holiday, or prosecute the KKK as terrorist organizations, make, lynching a national hate crime. So, I mean, I like those things are all positive. They're all really great. Like I said, we could raise the question of why you didn't do it in the first 4 years, just like we could say the same with Joe Biden. But I think at the end of the day, it's just, if you're going to put out these sorts of ideas, then you probably should have some sort of evidence to follow up with it, other than just saying, I signed the Second Step Act.
Yeah, I think that's a key difference here is that, and also, Trump has, like you say, he's been president for the last 4 years, and he did sign the First Step Act, which is a great step forward in reforming the criminal justice system. But at the same time, his Department of Justice has essentially stopped investigating police departments around the country for misconduct, and that was a big thing under the Obama administration, where they would be very, aggressive and looking at and investigating police departments that were, mistreating their citizens, or accused of police brutality. They were very active in making sure to combat that using the Department of Justice, and using things called consent decrees, which allowed, which forced police departments to essentially get like pre-authorization for certain things, or would, it's an agreement to clean up their act, the Department of Justice could force them to do certain things. Under the Trump administration, they have essentially stopped doing all of that. So it's kind of strange, to say, hey, we're here to reform the criminal justice system, but we're also going to not combat, bad policing practices at the same time. You can do both. But Trump, like you say, is very law and order in his messaging, and he blames, democratic cities where a lot of black people live for being violent, and blaming the high murder rate on people who live there, while at the same time signing the First Step Act. So I don't know if both of those messages can coexist. But I mean, it's like you say, it's a try. I mean, making Juneteenth a holiday, you could have did that this year, and back in June and July. Like, that's not something we really care about, to be honest with. Like, oh, that's nice, but making the KKK and Antifa terrorist organizations, okay, it's these are symbolic things they put into this plan. These are very, very symbolic things that honestly I don't care about, and I don't think a lot of other black folks care about. We've been known the KKK as a domestic terrorist organization. We've been known that. He throws Antifa in there. I get it, but at the end of the day, I think it's a skinny plan that they put together at the last minute. Because there was no comprehensive plan for Black America from him. So it's a try. I don't know how much it's gonna help, but at least they're trying.
Yeah, that's all you can say. I mean, it's at least they're trying. I mean, it's conversely, Joe Biden's plan. I will say, Devin, the one thing I do not like about Joe Biden's plan is it's called, lived every voice, because that definitely seems like that's an attempt to kind of go back to our national anthem.
Both parties do it.
Yeah, exactly. Both parties do it. So, but it's clever, I guess, because, it is for us. If you look at his website, he's got like a plan for, Native Americans, for planning for Catholic. He's got, different plans. It's almost like Elizabeth Warren, but some of those important highlights. He does want to increase the funding for for the Minority Business Development Agency, which one thing we forgot to note, Donald Trump's plan does mention that agency as well, as far as making it permanent and actually placing a new Assistant Secretary of Commerce to oversee it. So, they're both kind of on the same boat of that, reversing half of all the new PPE funds for small businesses, which, Devin, that was a huge issue. I think that most Democrats had with the stimulus bills, is that small businesses kind of got left out of PPE. And I think Joe Biden's whole, not whole, but one of his chief pillars have been, I'm going to stabilize us in the coronavirus. He's like, I'm going to, in the virus or whatever, to try to get us back to some normalcy. So I think it's important that his plan really highlights that as a key feature, even going into families buying their first home, because I think Devin, we've talked a lot about how home ownership goes a lot into wealth management and trying to close the economic gap that we face amongst black and brown and white people. So it's great to see that they've got some initial steps to try to help with that.
Yeah, I think Biden's plan, called Lift Every Voice, it's on joebiden.com. It's extensive. We read the Democratic Party platform before the Democratic Convention, and it's pretty similar to what they had in there, and it's very extensive. And I think this is a key difference to me between their plans, is that at least in Joe Biden's plans, he acknowledges things that are related to coronavirus, like the Paycheck Protection Program, where a lot of black businesses missed out on because they don't have relationships with, banks in their communities that can help them get these loans. And so at least, Joe Biden trying to reserve half of the new PPP loans for businesses that are smaller with 50 employees or less is a huge deal, which could help to get, black-owned businesses some of that PPP money because they are suffering as just like other businesses. And one thing to help, like you say, build that generational wealth, one thing we know is that a lot of people's wealth is tied up in their homes. And so in Joe Biden's plan, he does want to create a refundable and, importantly, advanceable tax credit up to $15,000 for new home buyers. And that is something that will help a lot of people, including myself, when I go to buy my first home, that we could take advantage of immediately with it being advanceable. And so anyone could get this tax credit, and that will certainly help folks to move up and buy homes. But it also, interestingly, Joe Biden did address the issue of housing appraisals and the discrimination that happens there, because there was a story, I think a month or two ago, about an appraiser came into the house and there were like pictures of black people on the walls, and they valued the home less than what it should have been. And then what happened is they called, I think, another appraiser, or maybe the same one, and they changed the pictures on the wall to be white people, and the appraiser actually appraised the house for more. And so that is a very real thing that happens around the country. And so Joe Biden is actually attacking that problem by creating what he says is a national standard for housing appraisals, ensuring that they, one, have adequate training, but also have an appreciation, for the neighborhoods, and don't hold, implicit biases because of a lack of community understanding. That's something that a lot of people don't know about, but that's an interesting part of home ownership when it comes to buying and selling. The other thing, attached to building that wealth is credit. Credit is a barrier for a lot of black folks. We know this is almost the number one reason why black people don't get homes. They get denied because of their credit rating. Biden actually would create a new public reporting agency. So a new credit reporting agency within the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which would seek to minimize, racial disparities in credit, and would also seek to use other avenues like paying rent, cell phone bills, and utility bills that would factor into your credit rating, which is not what's happening right now. So Adrian, I think those to me were some things that you don't necessarily know about, but could have a huge difference when it comes to trying to create wealth and get access to capital and loans and homes. Being able to help people buy homes, sell them, but also helping them get access by improving the way that we report credit or calculate, people's credit scores. I think Adrian could be a huge deal for a lot of folks who have, traditionally been, denied because of their credit ratings or credit scores.
I agree, Devin. I think that those are important, and I think that if we're going to get our people to a higher economic level, then it's going to start with credit and home ownership and things. The other thing is going to start with is education, which he's doing. Trying to provide high quality universal pre-K for all 3 and 4 year olds. I think we know all the research that says that early childhood learning is so crucial in development, and we really need to kind of amend those systems that we have in place. I like the fact that he's tripling Title I funding, which viewers, that's a funding that goes to schools where there are a lot of low income families. Obviously, they need resources. They need as much funding as they can get to help, boost test scores, hire better staff and things of that nature. One of the things, Devin, that that he picked up on that I think his more liberal members of the caucus would wish it would be a little bit more, but it looks like a cancellation of a minimum of $10,000 of federal student loans, which is really good because that's going to be for people earning up to 125,000. So that's going to be a huge weight off of people's shoulders. Because I mean, you think about it, if people are paying, $100 a month to pay student loan debt, that's less money that they're putting to stimulate the economy. So it's a really good thing whenever you're able to forgive these things. Even make
and I'll say too, just to add in there, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that immediate cancellation of $10,000 was included in the HEROES Act that the Democrats passed back in May. That was a coronavirus legislation. So it is in the bill and is waiting to be voted on in the Senate and can be signed by the next administration. So that is actually, that immediate $10,000 cancellation is within reach. So it's not pie in the sky. That is actually on paper in a bill. And could happen should Joe Biden and the Democrats take over the House and Senate next year.
No, that's an important.
I just want to point that out.
That's an important point, Devin. I mean, it just kind of goes to show how failed our Senate has been, because there are a lot of bills on Mitch's desk that he just doesn't want to bring to the floor. I think that the maximizing the Pell Grants. I think both parties want to do that. Trump and Biden both want to do that. Helping with the healthcare for African Americans. Joe Biden's plan is creating a public option for healthcare, which I think would help to complement, Obamacare and make it better. If you're going to have, private insurance, make sure you have the public option. Diversify, spread the wealth amongst the entire risk pool of America. So I mean, Devin, it's a lot of different things that are working to make things good. One interesting thing, just because here in California, one of the propositions we have is to end cash bail and maybe replace it with a system of algorithms. And it looks like Joe Biden's plan does include a national effort to end cash bail system. So that's been something I think that there's been a lot of debate about, because the NAACP is actually against ending cash bail, because a lot of the systems apparently have been called like black boxes, and some of those algorithms can be racially biased versus someone just paying their bail. So that'll be an interesting one, Devin, to see. But hey, I will give it to Joe Biden in the sense that Donald Trump's plan, I will say it was about 2 or 3 pages, but Joe Biden's plan was a lot more detailed, and I think it pointed to a lot of the things that we as Black Americans are concerned with and are paying attention to. And I just believe that more people can find Joe Biden and Kamala Harris more credible with these promises than Donald Trump and Mike Pence. That to me, at the end of the day, Devin, that's what's most important.
Yeah, I think you've definitely seen a shift from the Democratic Party to the left, way to the left. I mean, these things you're talking about, like Joe Biden has on his website, making public colleges and universities tuition free. When Bernie Sanders said that in like 2016, people thought he was crazy, talking about free college, for all or anything like that. Joe Biden here in 2020 has it on his website. They want to make college free. They want to make, community college, 2 years of community college, completely free. They would make public college and universities tuition free. There's a difference. But, I mean, what you see is they're trying to tackle it all from helping people to build wealth and get skills without having to be saddled with student debt, and get homes. That way you can use your home's equity to start a business or send your kids to college or do anything you really want to. I mean, having that wealth available to you, you can pass it down. And so I think at least from what I see in reading his plan, is you definitely see a very clear pathway of, it's not perfect by no means. I would have liked to have seen, more programs for helping African Americans start businesses, some kind of small business minority program where they come in, they train you, they give you the capital to start your own business. I would have liked to have seen something like that. But this is a start. Like you say, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have definitely responded to those on the left and the progressives. And should they get in office and they take the House and the Senate through the Democrats, we could very well see a lot of what we're talking about here going into effect, and becoming part of the law. I mean, so these are huge changes and good ones. I think that we need definitely. So there you have it. We covered Trump's platinum plan. We covered Biden's Lift Every Voice plan. So you have a very distinct choice to make on November 3rd. So that was kind of the not all of it, some highlights of what their plans are. So we're going to take our next break, and when we come back, we're going to cover, as always, we're going to cover the coronavirus pandemic, because it is still here with us. We are setting new records as far as cases go. So we want to talk about that, and some cybersecurity news that came out this week. So stick with us, and we will be right back.
Nice.
Welcome back. So, of course, we're going to get into the coronavirus pandemic and give you an update on what's going on and what's the latest surrounding the COVID-19 pandemic. So, on Friday, yesterday, the United States actually set another record for coronavirus cases, with almost 100,000 cases announced just on Friday. And the U.S. currently has about 229,000 COVID-19 related deaths. And I think we're still seeing hospitalizations are still climbing to over 40,000 now. And so we are seeing a definite surge across the country. Testing is increasing, but not at the rate at which new cases are. So it's not, this surge in cases is not totally explained by just, we're doing more testing. So keep that in mind. The other good news is that although we are seeing a surge in coronavirus cases, deaths are still hovering around 1,000 a day, but they're not spiking like we're seeing in cases. Although deaths are a lagging indicator, so they tend to spike a little bit later after we see the cases go up. Right now, it does appear, though, just in general, that we are getting better at treating people who have COVID-19, not with cures, but with some therapeutics. And we've been with it for now over 6 months, so naturally doctors and nurses are better adept at handling COVID-19 patients. So the deaths have not quite spiked yet. So that is some good news. A lot of people are getting it, they're recovering quickly, and they tend to be okay. So but as far as a vaccine, They're still saying end of the year, possibly early January, but it's not going to be widely available until probably mid 2021. And Adrian, we've talked about this pandemic probably every show. And I think, this is the one thing that has really sunk Donald Trump's chances of reelection. Yet he seems to be undeterred and trying to play it down. And so he had a rally, I think this may have been yesterday this week, and he again, is continuing to attack the people on the front lines, the people who are protecting and treating folks in the hospitals. And, now Adrian, he's trying to say doctors and nurses are making extra money off of COVID-19 patients. It's just ridiculous, but it just shows he almost is out of touch with what is happening down here in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, it just reminds me of him calling, our military fallen, suckers and losers. I mean, he's calling our frontline healthcare workers, cheats and scam artists trying to pronounce people, or rather pronounce more COVID deaths just to make an extra $2,000 is what he's saying. And it's just ridiculous. And it's even further ridiculous to those people who were at the rally who endured that and cheered it and clapped at it. And I don't care if you're someone who was at the rally and you listened to it. That's ridiculous for anybody to endorse that, because you see all the reports around the country from healthcare workers who are crying, who are thinking about just giving up because our country is going through a time where they've seen so much death, consistently day after day after day after day, that they just don't know what to do. I mean, they've made PSAs to almost plead with us to wear masks, social distance, take this virus serious. And you got a guy who's put off of these deaths. That's crazy. And then he says, if you get it, you're gonna get better, and then you'll be immune. And that's just false statements, because he's not immune. No one's immune to it. There's been no herd immunity. All these different hocus pocus. I mean, there's nothing like that. He's just, again, using all of this disinformation to make it seem as if he and the administration has done a great job handling this pandemic, when this is the worst display of a president that we've ever had in American history. I mean, that's why you've got so many people like the Lincoln Project and things coming out and saying, if you're American, you've got to stop this guy from getting another 4 years, or else he's going to continue to kill us, with the pandemic and all these other things. So Devin, him saying these sorts of comments are just so disrespectful, as if he hasn't already said enough to make people turn and never support him. This is yet again just another display of a person who is just narcissistic and doesn't care anything about bringing progress and stability to America.
Yeah, I mean, that's he's playing the hits. He's trying to drum up the same kind of support that he had in 2016, and trying to say that everything is rigged, and somehow doctors and nurses across the country have stepped up and want to rig the election in favor of Joe Biden by overcounting the number of COVID-19 cases so they can line their pockets. It's just utterly false. I mean, what he is getting at is true. Yes, early in the pandemic, hospitals did receive more money from an insurer or Medicare if they were treating a person that had COVID-19. That part is true. However, the second part, as far as them overcounting people and deaths and all that, is totally false. There's no evidence.
I mean, Devin, there's not to cut you off, but there's been more reporting of us undercounting deaths than the claims that Donald Trump is talking about.
That is true. And that's what Donald Trump does. He takes something that on its face may not mean a whole lot, and he takes it and he twists it into this weird conspiracy of doctors and nurses across the country who want to overcount COVID patients for more money, and then that leads to more deaths and things like that. That makes him look bad somehow. It's just ridiculous. And even this prompted the American Medical Association to go out and have to put out a statement that said that their physicians are not overinflating the number of COVID-19 patients. So, folks, anything he says you have to take with a gigantic grain of salt. Go research it and check it before you believe anything he says. And in some more COVID-19 news, it's not just the United States that is seeing a spike in cases. Europe is seeing a huge spike in cases, particularly in France and Germany. They have announced new lockdowns now, with the French president Emmanuel Macron saying the virus is circulating at a speed that not even the most pessimistic forecasts had anticipated. So they are seeing humongous surges in cases and are seeing a spread like they haven't seen before. So what's happening now is that France is in a lockdown. This started yesterday. France is in a lockdown. People are expected to stay in their homes to buy, except to buy essential goods, medical attention, or to exercise for up to an hour a day. It's funny they give you a timeline, but they will be allowed to go to work, and schools will still be open. But the majority of the country is going to be shut down. And the same thing is happening in Germany. They're going to be shutting down bars, restaurants, and theaters from starting on Monday, November 2nd, until November 30th. And so, but again, their schools and things are going to be open, and stores would be allowed to be open. So, Adrian, I think what we're seeing is the entire globe is experiencing kind of a surge in coronavirus cases. And people are responding differently. Here in this country, it's more depending on the state you live in. But Europe is getting hit pretty hard as well, and even we got some college football news here that we're gonna get to.
Yeah, I know, Devin. I think that it's been a bummer for everybody because I think we were trying to get to college football and NBA and all these things as a way to kind of pull us out of quarantine and COVID, but COVID says no. COVID is saying we're not going to. It's not going to be deterred, basically. And according to CBS Sports, looks like Clemson star quarterback Trevor Lawrence tested positive, and it's a bummer. I mean, they're having an awesome season this year. They playing against Boston today. Fortunately, even though he wasn't there, it looks like they squeaked out a good win. But they've got another game coming.
Yeah, that's Boston College, by the way.
Say again.
That's Boston College.
Oh, I'm sorry. My bad. I thought I said Boston College, but my bad. It's all these lights and stuff. I've got my setup all fancy and stuff, blurring my script here. But they've got another game coming up next week with Notre Dame, and his symptoms appear kind of mild, so I'm not sure if he'll be able to come back for that game. But Devin, I think it just goes to show, like I said in the beginning, even though we're trying to, I guess, get back to some normalcy with sports and other activities, I mean, the pandemic it's going to be here. I mean, even going back to our home state, because we always like to bring in a little bit of our news. You've got Dr. Thomas Dobbs, who's the top healthcare official in Mississippi, just put out a really good interview to kind of wrap up this coronavirus news here, where it seems like in some communities, which it seemed like the Black communities in Mississippi, at least, they took to the advice of medical professionals to wear masks and do social distancing, and they're not seeing as much trending in the population. Conversing, the white population who did not do it, Devin. So I don't know if I don't want to paint it as a black-white thing, even though in Mississippi it always seems to be that way, but it definitely goes to show, when you have a population who will commit to science versus a population who won't commit to science, the numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, I mean that his assessment there is as blunt as it gets, and the reason he went out there and said this because initially during the pandemic, like he said, Black communities were being hit the hardest, and so I think at some point when we did an episode in June, Black folks were making up about 60% of new cases and over half of the deaths in Mississippi, even though that's out of whack with the population proportions. And so what's happened is that since then, that trend has reversed, and now white people actually are most of the deaths and are most of the cases, and that has shifted in like the last few months. And so what he's saying is that they're having an issue with the white population, abiding by the mask rules and the social distancing rules. And the Black community, after being hit as hard as they were, is really stepping up with wearing masks and social distancing. And so the spread has really slowed down. And so white people surpassed black folks in their total reported death toll on September 21st, and that has continued onward since then. And so, I mean, as much as we want to act as though this thing doesn't exist anymore, COVID-19 is still here. We still have to take the proper precautions here and make sure that we're protecting not only ourselves but other folks who could be at serious risk of being in the hospital with COVID-19. May not die, but you may end up in the hospital, which is serious within itself. So we're going to take our last break here, or our second to last break, and we're going to cover some cybersecurity news that came out this week. And then after that, we'll get to our quick hits, and we'll be out of here. So we're almost done. Just stick with us, and we'll be right back.
All right, viewers, let's get back into this cybersecurity story here. So, as if 2020 hasn't brought us enough stuff with the pandemic, an upcoming election, there are a lot of cybersecurity concerns that are actually bringing some bad moments to our healthcare system and to our election system as well. So to start off with our hospitals. So apparently there's been a wave of ransomware throughout the country that have been plaguing our healthcare system. The FBI and two other agencies have confirmed credible information of increased and imminent cybercrime threats to U.S. hospitals and healthcare providers. It looks like the groups are aimed at data theft and also disruption of healthcare services, which, let's be honest, we're in the pandemic, so we don't need either of those ever. But with this ransomware, Devin, it looks like it scrambles the data of the hospital, and that kind of leads to them not even being able to operate. Maybe they have to deter ambulances, or maybe they can't administer certain computer-based hospital services like cancer treatments and such. And when you think about that, that's life-threatening. If a hospital can't operate, if you're a cancer patient and you're supposed to be having a cancer treatment, or if you're on a ventilator or something like that with COVID, I'm sure that's probably running with some computer-based technology as well. This could probably be a very life-threatening thing. Devin, when you look at it, it looks like in September, an attack of about 250 facilities under the hospital chain Universal Health Services was actually affected. In total, about 59 U.S. healthcare providers or systems have been impacted, disrupting services in about 510 facilities. So, Devin, in the midst of a pandemic, having hospital hackings, that's definitely not what we need. So, this is an ongoing story, ongoing investigation. So viewers, as this develops more, we'll make sure to bring you more details.
Yeah, I mean it's something we cannot forget that we live in a very digital world, and there are folks who are going to be out there looking to steal information. And so I worry about things like the vaccine. People going in and getting into the systems where the vaccine or the companies that are creating these vaccines, and you know slowing that down. And so something to definitely keep your eyes on. Change passwords, do everything you can to protect your accounts. Not just hospitals, but you personally. Facebook, see, social media accounts are always targets for people who are looking to do bad on the internet. And so it wasn't just hospitals and healthcare providers who have been attacked. Actually, this week, the Trump campaign announced that a website that they run was hacked over this week, and it was claimed that they actually accessed multiple devices that belonged to the Trump and his family. And so viewers who were going to the website saw that saw the words, "This website was seized." The hackers claimed to have evidence to completely discredit Trump, and they said to see that if the information would be released, they were encouraging the viewers to donate cryptocurrency, and depending on which account a viewer donated to, it would be a yes or no vote. And so a spokesman for the campaign said that they are working with law enforcement to investigate the attack. But this, again, that's pretty serious. If they were able to get access to multiple devices belonging to Trump and his family.
And this was the Trump campaign's website. This is his the main website. So I mean, this is a big deal.
That's a huge deal, and it's a huge cybersecurity thing for them personally, because you don't know what information they got off of those devices or off the website. So definitely huge news there. And continuing on with the Trump campaign in Wisconsin now, the Wisconsin Republican Party has said that the hackers stole $2.3 million from their bank account, which was being used to help reelect Donald Trump. And this happened on October 22nd, and they contacted the FBI. And of course, Wisconsin, Adrian, is a battleground state. It's a very important state to Trump because he won that state in 2016 by less than 23,000 votes. So you're talking razor thin margins. And you have a campaign, and the Trump campaign, that does not have a ton of money. Mm-hmm. And so here you get hackers stealing $2.3 million from the Wisconsin GOP's account. That's going to hurt. You're not just going to come off of $2 million off the bat. So Adrian, you see these hackers could be trying to tilt the election in a certain way. I'm not going to say they're going for Joe Biden, but certainly doing things like this can certainly hurt Donald Trump's bids for re-election, especially in a state as important as Wisconsin.
Yeah, Devin, to piggyback off the last comment, I'm hoping that I hope that these hackings don't continue, which fortunately, the RNC and different officials haven't really reported to any other state parties under the potential attempt of being hacking. But I'm hopeful that these don't continue, because it just plays into the narrative that Donald Trump is trying to present, that the system's rigged, people are out to get him, they don't want to see him in office. So if hey, if you're a hacker and you listen to the Black agenda, back off. We just need to be a clean election. That's all we need here. On to some more hacking, or I guess not necessarily hacking, but misinformation, if we hadn't had enough of it already. So this is out of Arizona. So apparently there was a Facebook group called Being Black in Arizona. The group was basically painting a narrative that the American system is rigged, it's messed up, and there's basically no reason to participate in the voting process. One person recalls seeing a statement like, Democrats and Republicans are the same, there's no point in voting. Even one person said there was a statement that said, Obama didn't do anything during his term, why vote for a Democrat this time around? So, I mean, Devin, there's a lot of different, misinformation, a lot of different things going in. I mean, when you look at this story, I mean, this isn't an uncommon story. I mean, we heard the reports from the Miami Herald of the Trump team, trying to work to deter the Black vote in a lot of swing states. But this is just, from a group that they're trying to investigate, where it seems like the tactics mirror or resonate a little bit like Russian interference. So, Devin, I don't know. I mean, this is one of those things to where, you alluded to the fact that, there's a lot of low turnout amongst Black and Latino voters. So whenever you throw in this misinformation into the picture, I think that's definitely going to raise a lot of alarms and red flags.
Yeah, it will. I mean, and in particular, after 2016, I think people are definitely more aware of what's going on, when they see these types of things, because that was essentially how they depressed the vote in 2016 by putting out false, statements about Hillary Clinton and really playing up that whole super predator comment and saying Hillary Clinton doesn't like Black people, so you shouldn't vote for her, and really, trying to disengage people from the political process. And they were successful with a lot of folks sitting out. But I think this go around, having learned what we learned about the Russia disinformation campaign, I think folks are ready this time, I hope, for when they see these types of ads to really look at it and be skeptical of who's behind it, and why they're putting out these types of messages to these types of folks. It's pretty obvious, being Black in Arizona, what the goal is there. When you see those messages of Democrats and Republicans being the same and Obama didn't do anything for you, you really have to question who's behind this group and why they're putting those messages out, and if they really have your best interest at heart. And so, again, I always tell people, don't share stuff if you haven't researched it and vetted and read the article, number one, to make sure that, the headline matches what's in the article, because there's so much disinformation out there. And our president is one of the biggest sources of it. So you really cannot believe what you read on the surface. You really have to dig into and read the articles. So that's going to do it for this segment. We're going to take one more quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to wrap up the show with some quick hits and give you one last message as we get, as we finish up our last show here before Election Day on Tuesday. So stick with us, and we'll be right back. All right, welcome back. So we're going to end our show as always with some quick hits here and some nuggets of news throughout the weeks, things you may have heard about, things you may not have heard about. And so the very first thing we want to start with is some news out of Louisville, Kentucky, where Breonna Taylor was killed. So it looks like Sergeant Jonathan Mattingly, who was involved in the raid on Breonna Taylor's house, who was the one who actually they thought to be shot by Kenneth Walker, her boyfriend. Sergeant Mattingly is actually suing Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, and he is alleging that the boyfriend assaulted. He's suing for assault, battery, and emotional distress. And this is a counterclaim to a civil suit that Kenneth Walker filed against the city of Louisville in September. Now, this suit is saying that Kenneth Walker's conduct was, quote, outrageous, intolerable, and offends all accepted standards of decency and morality. And this all stems from Kenneth Walker shooting at Officer Mattingly once they broke through Breonna Taylor's front door. And so Kenneth Walker's attorney, Steve Romines, has said that if Kenneth Walker can be sued for defending himself, he said, quote, make no mistake, all lawful gun owners' rights are at risk, and that should scare everyone. And so interesting to see that Mr. Mattingly was not charged with the murder of Breonna Taylor, yet he is here suing her boyfriend for shooting him in the thigh for breaking into the house on a no-knock warrant. So
exactly, and not to mention, Devin, Kentucky is one of those stand your ground states to where if you think that you're protecting yourself and it's self-defense, you can shoot. So it's, I think what the attorney for Kenneth Walker is saying is it makes a lot of sense. So we'll kind of see how that goes in. One news story of views that we saw that they kind of helped to maybe stabilize some of our division. We saw that there's going to be a shared campus amongst Jewish, Christians, and Muslim participants, so that they can all have a common campus, which I found kind of be really interesting because everybody's got their own practices. And this is actually coming out of Omaha, Nebraska. Looks like the land was purchased in 2011. There's going to be a synagogue, there's going to be a mosque, there's going to be a church. And it looks like they, laid out the groundwork for it. I don't know, Devin. It seems like an interesting concept to kind of see. It's almost like I guess they're calling it kind of like a unique experiment to kind of see the diversity and to see the unity that you can kind of have, that you can have when you've got three different backgrounds and three different views of religion kind of coming together. Looks like they'll be opening up soon, and I don't know. We'll have to make sure to bring you some news on this, viewers, kind of see how we can all begin to practice religion, go to school together and work together.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely interesting to see the different faiths come together, and it is open. It opened up on I think it was last Saturday, so they're open and they are there, and so of course people were trying to understand how these different faiths could all worship on the same grounds, even though they're in different buildings. They all have their own areas, but it is interesting. Maybe this would be a trend, around the country where different faiths would come together, purchase some land, build their faith centers right there on that same land and share it. It's certainly economical.
Definitely helps with tolerance.
Cost of the land. It absolutely does. It gets you to connect with people in your community who you otherwise wouldn't see. I think a lot of people have said, Sunday is like the most segregated time of the week because everybody's going to all their different churches, and it is definitely segmented by race. And so here you have these different faiths coming together. Hopefully this will be something to help heal over some of those divisions and help people connect with folks they don't normally see. And so in some other news here, coming out of Trinidad and Tobago, there is a Venezuelan oil tanker that is parked off the coast of the country. And so back in September, there was an outcry, really. So people were really concerned that this tanker here could actually end up being a massive oil leak if it sunk into the ocean and started spewing out the oil that's inside of it. Now, this tanker is it's 860 feet long, and it's got a 1.4 million barrels of crude oil inside of it. So you can understand why people are worried about it. And so right now, Trinidadian officials are saying that it doesn't pose a risk of spilling and causing an environmental catastrophe, as they call it, but they did say that Venezuela has started the process of unloading oil to further avoid any kind of disaster. It's a slow process now, but they do expect for that to take up 35 days to unload the oil. So hopefully, we don't have anything that's anywhere close to the Exxon Valdez spill that occurred in 1989, which a lot of people still remember, a horrific oil spill there. So hopefully, Adrian, they avoid, catastrophe. But it looks like if they're unloading oil in 35 days, they'll be able to kind of take care of it.
Yeah, Devin, I saw the video of some activists, doing a kind of like a canvassing of the ship. I mean, it's leaning pretty bad, and they put some anchors there to kind of secure it, but it's leaning pretty bad. And I think that all of this pressure has, made the Venezuelan government kind of say, hey, maybe we need to do something. Because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, someone can obviously research this, but I believe that tanker had been out there for several years. I think maybe up to like 15 years. I mean, it had been out there for a long time, just kind of sitting there. On to a little bit of some funny news here. Out of Devin State in Texas, if there's not enough going on in Texas, looks like out of Richmond, there were some neighbors who got upset with one of the locals, Miss Angela, because of her festive Halloween decorations. Looks like she decided to, liven things up, and she wanted to do a display of a skeleton strip club, Devin. So I don't think you see any of those, ever, and there's probably a reason why you don't see them. But her homeowners association called the display scolacious. They just coined a new term there. Made sure that they said that means that it's inappropriate. Looks like she received a letter saying that she's got within 30 days to take the display down. Angela, she just said that, she's got a bunch of haters, and she was just only trying to do something positive to kind of give some laughs to help in a difficult year. Needless to say, she'll be burying the display on November 1st. So I guess she's got she's got 2 more days, and then, she's got to get that display. No, she's got tomorrow, and she's got to take that display down. So, if y'all want to go see a skeleton strip club, go to Richmond, Texas, or check it out on the internet.
Yes. I love it. Angela, if you're watching, I know she's probably not, but hey, forget those haters, man. She was just trying to give people some laughs, and they, people want to rain on her parade. I do love the homeowners association coining scolacious instead of salacious. So that is hilarious. But forget those haters. They don't understand. They don't have any sense of humor.
Hey, and Devin, in that same sort of tone, I feel like our last little segment here, that's what all of these candidates need to be telling some of their haters. Just they need to stand back and stand by, I guess.
Something to that effect. So our last quick hit here is kind of an inspiration and to kind of give you an idea of what's at stake in this election, not particularly at the top of the ticket with the president, but down the ballot in some key states where a lot of black Senate candidates, a lot of African American candidates are on the ballot and have real chances of winning their prospective races. And so this was a story we got out of the Atlanta Voice, and it said this is a wild stat too. The South is putting up the most black candidates since Reconstruction. So you have to go all the way back to Reconstruction to get the number of candidates that we have running right now, which is 6 people. 6 African Americans are running for the U.S. Senate, and so Cory Booker is actually he's in a re-election campaign, but he has double-digit leads, so he's probably going to win. But some of the other candidates you may have heard of, you may not have. One is Mr. Jamie Harrison out in South Carolina, who's running against one and only Lindsey Graham. So Jamie, used to be the chair of the South Carolina Democratic Party, and is right now running against Lindsey Graham. And he, if he wins, South Carolina could have 2 black senators, one which would be Democrat, and the other would be Republican. And so the next candidate is Raphael Warnock. I hope I said that right.
Oh yeah,
He's
Pastor
running out of
Warnock.
Georgia. Pastor Warnock running in Georgia. He's the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta, and he is running in a special election to unseat Kelly Loeffler. I believe there is another Democratic candidate in
Yeah,
that race as
there
well. It's like four
is.
people.
He's I think the last poll I saw, Devin, was I think he's got like 44%. So I mean he's got things short
Mm-hmm.
of. Not to mention, I mean, being the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church, I mean that's the church of MLK, Church of John Lewis. So he's probably got a lot of
Yeah.
support, especially out of Atlanta, but out of the entire state.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that'd be a red seat filled by Kelly Loeffler that the Democrats could be flipping. Same thing with Jamie Harrison. Almost all of these are going to be red seats that could be flipping to blue. And so, of course, from my home state, we had him on the show.
Mm-hmm.
You should know him, former Secretary Mike Espy, who is running to unseat Senator Cindy Hyde Smith. And I think the last polls we saw, Mr. Espy was down maybe 1 point.
Yeah.
It's a dead heat going into election day. So, folks in Mississippi, you have a real chance to nominate and vote in a black senator that we have not had in a very long time, maybe ever. And so, Adrian, there are some other candidates here in Louisiana, Tennessee, and Michigan. If you want to tell the folks about who's running and what's their standing in the race.
Yeah, I mean, looks like Adrian Perkins, out of Louisiana, mayor of Shreveport, also an Army veteran. He's running to unseat Bill Cassidy. Looks like out of Tennessee, which I used to live in Memphis, so it's good to see this as well. You've got Marquita Bradshaw, she's a environmentalist and an activist. And a little interesting fact, she's the first Black woman to win a major political party nomination in a statewide race in Texas. So that's going to be really nice. As we know, Senator Lamar Alexander said he's going to be retiring, so his seat came up available. She'll be running against Bill Haggerty. And then one of the other ones that has been kind of interesting, I think, for some people, to where it's almost nice to have an African American in the Senate, of course, but this African American holds the title of Republican, so I would definitely say I'm a little iffy about it. But we do have John James, who is a Republican politician, businessman, and veteran out of Michigan, who's running to unseat current Democrat Gary Peters. Again, I love to see people of our color in high places, but under the umbrella of Republican, I just don't know if I would almost have to support Gary in this one, even though, like I said, I'd love to be able to see our people doing well. But just to kind of give you a reflection of why we wanted to talk about this, viewers, in the history of our country, I mean, we've only had 10 members of the U.S. Senate who have actually been African American. I looked at it, and there's one who was actually elected, but he was never allowed to be seated. And when you think about that, I mean that's a long history and not very many members of our people. So that's just going to say that with the way the courts and politicians have made gerrymandering, and with the way we're looking at voter suppression, it's made it to us viewers very clear that our voices have such a unique and important role to play this year. I mean, we've got to get out to vote. We've got to get out and stand up for these people who are not only trying to bring change into Black communities, but those changes are going to be, changes that Latino communities need, that Native American communities, Asian Americans, even white Americans, because we all want to be able to, have good police, and all want to be able to have a house or good schools or healthcare or a stable job and generational wealth that we can pass to our family members. So the things that they are championing, it's not like they're just the Black agenda. They're only going to affect us. They're going to help everybody. So when you get out and vote, viewers, again, we can't tell you who to vote for, but we can tell you to vote based off of issues that are going to bring prosperity, going to bring about unity, and going to make America, be a great place to live in, and have other world leaders say, America, y'all kind of swayed for 4 years, but y'all are back on track and we admire you. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted to kind of end with a little bit of inspiration and let you know that this year our voices matter more than anything.
Definitely. Couldn't have said it any better. You know, your voices do matter, and I've said this. We've said this before. You know, if your vote didn't matter, they wouldn't try so hard to take it away and make it difficult for you to vote. People may ask, well, what does that mean? But you know, I imagine it this way: the people who want us in the place that we are today, or a lot of us are today, don't do things against us simply to do them. There is a reason, there is a plan behind them, and the reason is that if we don't participate in local elections, electing judges and sheriffs and mayors and governors and lieutenant governors, those people get to decide what happens in our lives and and who they make the rules, and we have to abide by them because we don't go to the ballot box and participate and choose who gets to make the rules. So they have all the power. So if you go to the ballot box and choose people who reflect your values and what you believe in, they then get to go on and have a say in state legislatures about what really happens on the ground into your lives. The state legislature, the governors and lieutenant governors have a lot of power over what happens to you on a daily basis. And so if you don't vote or participate, you're essentially ceding whatever power and say you have in the rules making process over to the other side and to the other party and other groups who get to decide what happens in your community, what shops get put in your community, how places are zoned, how districts are redrawn, what sheriffs, there's a lot of things that your vote can decide for you. It's not perfect. We're not going to get all the way to freedom just by simply voting, but we can absolutely make sure that we have people in those rooms who care about our opinion, who believe the same things that we do. And if you don't vote, you're all but ensuring you don't have a say in what happens to your life as far as your state and local governments. And so that is why your vote does matter. And that is why they try so hard to make sure that you don't show up at the ballot box on Tuesday, November 3rd. And so we wanted to leave you with that.
I was going to say, reclaim your voice. Don't let it be silenced. Go and reclaim it. Yeah. Stand up for it. Fight for it.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all for voting, but also holding these folks accountable after November 3rd. The real work starts on November 4th and 5th, and holding Joe Biden and Kamala and Jamie Harrison and Mike Espy accountable for the things that they're going around telling you right now. So it's good to vote, but you got to do the work afterwards to make sure they do what we want them to do or need them to do.
Which is a good segue to mention that we're going to be doing an episode to kind of discuss that, Devin, and how we can hold these newly elected officials accountable to all these promises about, helping our communities.
Oh, absolutely. We have to. We will maybe looking, inauguration day to start, day one of hope, what will probably be a Joe Biden administration. We're going to be talking about how you can hold those folks accountable, how you can hold Mike Espy accountable, and all the others that are running around the country. That way we make sure that the things that we want to get done. And if they don't, next go around, we may not be there to back them up with a vote. So I think you're seeing that now. People are not so beholden to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. They're more so like, what are you going to do for me to get my vote? And that should be our attitude every time. So that's it for our show today. I know it's a long one. We had a lot of good news. Bringing it to you as always Saturdays at 4:00. You can join us next week. We'll be, hopefully next week we'll have a result from the election and be able to talk about, president-elect and what's going to happen with that. And so follow us on social media at Black Agenda Podcast or at Black Agenda Pod. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Follow us, share our stuff, let people know what's going on. And Adrian, as always, tell them how they can give us a little bit of money to make sure we can keep this thing going.
Exactly, Devin. You can go to patron.podbean/Black Agenda Pod. Again, that's patron, patron.podbean/Black Agenda Pod. So yeah, we're always about that. We want to be able to give you the truth, but we got to, be able to do a little bit more to get our mission accomplished. And being able to do more requires money. So make sure you do that. Be on the lookout this Tuesday on Election Day. We're actually going to be dropping an episode on what mandatory voting could look like for our country. I think that's going to be a really, really good story, talking to Miles Rappaport, from the Harvard Kennedy School. So that's going to be a really, really awesome interview. So while you're voting, while you're waiting, and hopefully you're not waiting for hours like some people did, but if you happen to be waiting for hours, remember that you've got a great episode that'll be releasing that you can watch and listen to make sure that you got some motivation to make sure that you and everybody else around you votes.
Absolutely. Please do. Make your voice heard. Tuesday, November 3rd. Make sure you get out there, vote, and then we'll all sit down and watch what unfolds on Tuesday night. Hopefully, we get a result. So, as always, until next time, we'll catch you guys later. Thank y'all for watching.